McCarthy. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Stealth Biotherapeutics, and I'm pleased to join you today at Longevity Leaders 2020 to discuss the potential of mitochondrial-targeted therapeutics to treat diseases of aging. Stealth is a publicly traded company listed on NASDAQ under the ticker MITO, so I draw your attention to our forward-looking disclaimers. Mitochondria exist in every cell in our body, and they produce the energy that we need to survive. So they convert the food we eat and the air we breathe into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is the cellular unit of energy. As we grow older, our mitochondria become dysfunctional due to spontaneous mitochondrial DNA mutations, as well as external stressors such as obesity, high-fat diets, smoking, and pollution. Aging dysfunctional mitochondria produce less and less ATP and instead become biological pollutants within our bodies, producing pathological levels of reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. Reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress contribute to many diseases of aging and indeed to the aging process itself. So again, when our mitochondria are healthy, they produce the energy that our bodies need to sustain normal, healthy organ function. But when they're dysfunctional, the oxidative stress that they produce drives many downstream disease processes, including inflammation and fibrosis. I'm going to show you a video here of a cell undergoing pathological oxidative stress. And you can see that on the right, the cell really can't sustain that insult, and that leads to cell death. Whereas on the left, with Elamipretide treatment, there's a protective effect against the oxidative stress. These are electron micrographs showing you cross-sections of mitochondria. On the left is a normal, healthy mitochondria in the retinal cell of a mouse. In the middle, during disease, you can see that much of the inner mitochondrial membrane, which is the site of oxidative phosphorylation or ATP production, has been eliminated. And that's what happens during disease. And then on the right, you can see after a 6-week course of treatment with Elamipretide in this model, a restoration of normal mitochondrial morphology. Within our mitochondria, the inner mitochondrial membrane is organized into tubules called cristae, and those are connected both within the mitochondria and across mitochondrial networks, enabling a cellular energy grid of sorts. You can see on the left that connectivity in yellow. In the middle, during disease, you see a disruption of the connectivity, and with Elamipretide on the right, you see some protection against that disruption. In our current clinical development program, you'll see that we're developing Elamipretide, our lead compound, in a number of rare genetic diseases that we hope might inform some later efforts in diseases of aging. But we also are in late-stage clinical development in dry age-related macular degeneration, which is the leading cause of blindness in the elderly. Some early preclinical efforts, as well as some early clinical development efforts, inform the potential of mitochondrial targeted therapeutics such as ours in other diseases relating to aging. For example, preclinically, we've seen some signals that neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, cardiorenal diseases such as heart failure and kidney disease, and age-related decline in muscle function and in vision can be ameliorated by mitochondrial-targeted therapeutics. So I'm going to talk you through some of those potential areas of development, starting with dry age-related macular degeneration, where, as I mentioned, we are now in late-stage clinical development in a phase 2b clinical trial in geographic atrophy. That trial was really premised on promising results from a phase 1 clinical trial in patients with dry age-related macular degeneration, where we saw that after 6 months of Elamipretide therapy, vision was improved, both in regular light and in low light conditions. There were also improvements in visual quality of life questionnaires. It's surprising to see an improvement in vision in dry AMD, which leads to progressive vision loss. Usually over a 6 to 12 month period, you would see a decline in vision in these patients. And the disease really can be quite devastating, with an impact on quality of life and independence in elderly patients similar to that of late stage renal disease or cancer. So in skeletal muscle function, our skeletal muscle function declines as we get older, with age-related declines in hand strength starting as early as age 55. In our MOTION trial, which was conducted at the University of Washington, a single dose of elamipretide or placebo was administered to 40 healthy elderly patients with skeletal muscle mitochondrial dysfunction in the thenar muscle group, which is between your thumb and your forefinger. We observed a 30% increase in ATP production after a single dose of elamipretide versus 12.5% in placebo. After exclusion of one outlier who is considered to be outside of the protocol, that was statistically significant with a p-value of 0.055. This was also associated with improved function. The investigator at the University of Washington determined that the improvement observed in ATP in the MOTION trial was similar to what had been previously observed after 6 months of exercise and endurance training in a similar elderly patient population. So our hearts are hugely reliant on mitochondrial energy. Our hearts produce and consume about 6 kilograms of ATP every day. Therefore, mitochondrial dysfunction is a known target in heart failure. In a study conducted at the University of Colorado using explanted human heart tissue from heart transplant patients with ischemic, non-ischemic, and congenital heart failure, elamipretide was shown to improve mitochondrial function. And in a small proof-of-concept phase 2 clinical trial in patients with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, which accounts for about 50% of the heart failure in the United States and for which there are no approved therapies, we saw that a treatment with elamipretide for 1 month versus placebo demonstrated trends towards improved cardiac function, particularly during maximal exercise, which is when these patients were most impaired. So vascular disease impacts not only the heart, but also the kidney in elderly patient populations, and this can occur chronically or acutely due to an ischemic event. Preclinically, elamipretide has shown promise in both settings. Here I'm showing you data from a pig model of ischemia reperfusion injury, where elamipretide protected the microvasculature of the kidney from the injury, and in the bold MRI images below, you can also see protection from hypoxia, which is shown in red and yellow, versus normal, which is in blue. In a pilot study conducted at the Mayo Clinic in 14 patients undergoing percutaneous transluminal renal angioplasty, investigators similarly observed attenuation of hypoxia, increased renal blood flow, and improved kidney function post-procedure in elamipretide-treated patients. So for elderly cognitive function, mitochondria are also a known target. This would include diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and ALS. Hermana Chandra Reddy has published on elamipretide, or SS31 as it is also known, in the setting of Alzheimer's, where it has been shown to reduce amyloid beta production and maintain mitochondrial function in preclinical models. Researchers have also evaluated the compound in the setting of senility, concluding that it can offset age-related changes to signaling pathways implicated in aging brains, again in a preclinical setting. Our second-generation clinical compound, SBT272, which is now in a phase 1 trial in healthy volunteers, may be a better candidate for neurodegenerative development because it is more potent and we see higher concentrations in the brain, suggesting better blood-brain barrier penetration. Our preclinical work in ALS models has been promising, and we're also assessing the compound in a Parkinsonian-like model of multiple system atrophy. We're also developing a new series of small molecules, the SBT550 series, that we believe will also be promising for neurodegenerative diseases. So in summary, at Stealth, we see great promise in the potential of mitochondrial therapeutics to treat diseases of aging and even to potentially attenuate the aging process itself. The latter is an aspirational goal, which will require further evolution of regulatory pathways and also further clinical development. But it does merit exploration given the clear relationship between mitochondrial dysfunction and the aging process. We're hoping that our work in dry age-related macular degeneration, where we are in late-stage clinical development in phase 2B, will offer benefit to the millions of elderly individuals suffering from this devastating disease of progressive vision loss. We're working to develop our next generation therapies to target other diseases of aging. Thanks for your time.